Yeah, so welcome everyone to today's session. And as always, my name is Samuel Kamochu, and I am here to help you go through week 5 of the NatujengeOYF program. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Awesome. So I'll be transitioning from one place to the other, but I just wanted to remind you guys that we are doing week 5. Week 5 is more interactive. And as Marlene has mentioned, we are looking at a real problem that has a real user. So the problem that we have at hand is one of the challenges that one of our own is aware is facing. So one of our colleagues at work runs a company called Cake Yard that does cakes. And there is a lot that technology can do for them. So we are trying to come up with an idea and see whether some of you guys can execute it. And the idea is just, the basic idea is called Julisha. So in this session that we're going to have here, our biggest objective is to ensure that we can first identify a few things about the Julisha project. And those questions that we have to answer, for every challenge that you have to be given, you'll also have to answer them. So one of the things that I would like to say is that in every project that you will be working on, that you guys will be working on in the coming days, there are certain questions that you have to answer. And I would start by mentioning that every challenge, there must be a problem, and there is a person who has a problem. And also there is an environment or the constraint, the context. Allow me to call it the context. So you have to think about those things. So we will do a number of sessions. I know we had locked between 11 to 1. So what you're going to do is we will probably do a basic part, and then we'll take a little break, and then we can come and do the next part. But the key idea is for us to ensure that we actually understand how to model a problem and how to do the HLDs and the LLDs, to do the process modeling and to do the data modeling. Of course, if I tell you to come up with an ER diagram or the entity relationship diagram, if you think in relational sort of mindset, tables and databases, which still in which is something that is quite in use today. So we will help you frame that, and we identify the objects. And the truth of the matter is, you do not create a table for your system before you appreciate the whole thing. So we are going to do various parts, and for now, the key idea that we just want to do the problem statement at the moment. So we will discuss what's the problem, and we will discuss who are the people who are facing this, and the context that we are in. And in the context, you'll not just consider the environment, but you'll also consider environment and the systems in place that we can take advantage of. As we said earlier, it doesn't mean that what I'm doing is the right process. We just have a certain frame of thinking that you have to use. People can improve, and different guys can tell you different ways. But at the end of the day, they should be able to give us what we need. So the Julisha idea, just from the Swahili word, is it's a Swahili name. I don't know whether there is anyone who can guess what Julisha is. Doesn't mean that the product will be called Julisha, but yes, I just wanted to know whether there is anyone in the group who can who can just unmute and tell us what they get from that name. Can we make this session interactive? If you're not in a noisy place, kindly.
Princess Mali is trying to speak.
Yeah. I think Julisha means to inform someone about something.
Yeah, so it's to inform someone. Yeah, to make people know. Actually, the name came a few years ago. But the whole idea is to notify. Thank you, Barongo. At least we know your handwriting. Yes, so to notify, for some people could say enlighten, to remind. In the context of what you're doing is, we just want to remind people of what they should be reminded of. So we need to remind people of what they should be reminded of. So this is what we need to know. Now, because there are many things that we can deal with when you're working on a product, and with the spirit of Agile, we have to think about, we have to limit the context, limit the scope. So in the initial idea, there are many people who might want to be reminded, but let me just give you an example. Sometimes you might want, I know some of you will, you're either dating someone or you'll date someone, or you have already gone past the phase of dating. But one of the things that you'll know is it's a dangerous thing to forget your boyfriend or your partner's birthday. Yes, there is a gender that gets really angry, you forget, and there is another gender that is in the tendency of forgetting, or even anniversary. Now, the key thing is that this is a need for general public, right? Yeah, Waidaka, your remind is Kumbusha. Thank you, Waidaka, but maybe we could rename the project to Project Kumbusha. Thank you. But we're basically notifying you of something. Maybe we can at least agree on that layer. So the name doesn't really matter. But you can remind people, you can remind sick people to take medicine. I don't know whether this is a true, real case, whether there is a sick person that can be reminded. You can remind them of an appointment. But now, one of the special groups of people that we have identified as our initial set of people we can pilot this product with is the bakers. People who bake cakes, especially home bakers. You know, in this era of everyone starting a business, I know there are many home bakers. So home bakers don't have a lot of technology. They have a lot of their operations is manual, yeah? True or not true?
True.
Princess? Yes. So these are the people that we have to talk about. So we have looked at a home baker, and we want to describe a home baker so that you also understand the person. And this is the person of interest. So you have to identify who your solution is addressing. So if you don't have a guy in mind and a guy who you have set out to be the guy, then you need to start by doing so. Those guys who do design thinking, you know, empathy, all those things, they're just around in the same space, different words for doing different things, different approaches. But what we're trying to say is that you should not forget the person of interest in your product. And this is the person we will go to once we are done. And we will all not go to them once we are done. As part of the software engineering process, you have to work with them. So as a matter of fact, I had a call before I came here to the baker, with a baker, and they shared what they think would help their lives, considering the current pains that they have. Now, let me look at it and say that the home bakers are essentially people who are, I would say, tech savvy. We can describe them, some characteristics, and I want you guys to describe them, characteristics of those users. I think I can start and say that they are tech savvy in the sense that they are probably on social media. They have a phone and a smartphone in that case. Can someone describe a baker, home baker specifically, who we can deal and solve their problem here together? I want to see your comments. I know you know a baker somewhere. Can you describe them? so that we have a person or a persona that we can fit this guy into. And we can say most of the bakers will fall under this category. Yes, that's true, Steve, but I don't know whether that would influence any decision in terms of how you create the system. Because you're asking for characteristics of the user to help us decide on how they are going to access the system and the various things that we cannot assume. Because if you're building a system for my grandmother, the considerations are very different from a system for my mother. Probably they are okay with English. They are okay with they can speak English. Why am I saying that? Because if you're creating a system to interact with my grandmother, probably you need to consider multilingual. No need for multilingual consideration for this general baker that we know. They tend to be organized and need to run on a schedule in order to deliver quality goods in time. So that's another thing that Barongo has mentioned, that they tend to be organized and need to run on a schedule. Yeah, so they need a tool that could help them in organization. Would that be the case, Barongo? Can I put it like that?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, they take orders. They love feedback. Mufadhili, thanks for that. Actually, all businesses, people, they have a common recipe for their products. I feel like some of you are bakers. Thank you. They multitask. Barongo, that's interesting. I'm not sure they multitask. I don't know whether that influences us as the designers of the solutions. They have some delivery arrangements. Now, maybe I can ask you another thing. What do you think are their challenges? Challenges they face, so that we see whether we are designing a solution to, and this is just a trial. I'm not saying that this is how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to meet the real people. They tell you what their problems are, and you can limit them in the context of what your solution is all about. Steve, thank you for, they have preferred ingredients. What are their problems? What challenges do they face that could be solved by Julisha? Remember, Julisha is a service that's supposed to remind them. So we can hear that they have serious challenges. Keeping records is one challenge that Waithaka has given. Molly is a clear communication with the customer. Challenges accuracy with the ingredients. What else? Any other challenge? Keeping track of their recipes. I feel like Barongo, you're a baker, or you know one. So we have products, inventory management according to Mfadhili, managing orders, broken ovens. William, thank you. Yeah, so although we are thinking about the challenges they face, we are opinionated in the field that we want to solve, the challenge that we want to start with. What we need to discover is whether that challenge is a big one. I think I would add another challenge that very opinionated, because I know where I want to drive this conversation to. But one of the things that I'll tell you is that these home bakers, they have one challenge. they can easily forget managing managing historical orders. So in other words, what was placed historically, managing those orders for the sake of business next year. So essentially, you have a guy whose birthday is 15th of July, 2022. You had an order, a birthday cake. And if you have a birthday cake, then next year, 2023, you need to be reminded of the customer X days before. Now, I'm just highlighting, may forget the steps, designs, broken oven. So I will, I don't know whether Maranga, I should take that design conversation further. But I just wanted you guys to highlight these things. And I want, from the way of commenting, I want to know how many of you know a baker. Do you know a baker? And I want you guys to say, if you know a baker who you can call and find out. I want you guys to just state on the chat if you know a guy who bakes, a home baker who has served you or has served someone you know. So if you know one, please say yes on the chat. If you don't know any, just say no. And I want you guys to be supportive and ensure that you tell us, because there is another task that we know. Steve, thank you. You know a baker. Zoo, thanks. Waidaka, thanks. Oh, Henry, do you have a, okay, I see, we can tell something about you. Henry and Kibet, you guys don't know a baker. Joseph Samson, you don't have a cousin who is a baker. And yep. So all those guys who know Molly, you know a baker. Someone else? Shuri, you don't know a baker? Or are you blue ticking us?
Not personally.
Okay. But if I tell you to find one baker, you can find one.
Yes, I
between
can.
now and Friday. Okay. So that's
Yes.
the challenge. So one of the things that I want you guys to do, and take this as a challenge from me, Amos, thank you. From the suit that you're putting on, definitely you must know a baker. Yeah. So it just tells us that you must have bought a cake or someone bought you a cake. Yeah. So you know a baker. We'll give you a challenge, and I will give you the challenge to go and validate our assumptions on their characteristics, their challenges, and you also need to validate. So the challenge is validate our assumptions. So validate our assumptions about their characteristics. Yeah, Marlene, I didn't see you say one. You know one. And I want you to go and talk to that one. Yeah, you're also part of the team, Marlene. So about their characteristics and the challenges they face. So one of the things that we want you guys to understand is that with the skills that you have acquired or that you will develop over time, is that you can actually think of a user segment and go there and get into their space and identify the biggest challenge. And what are we trying to do? We want to come and, can you validate our anchor challenge? Our anchor challenge is, we want to help them when they make an order notifications. So when they deliver a cake, they can tell the customer, thank you, via SMS. That would be beneficial to their brand. So if your business is called Cakeyard, you just receive a message from Cakeyard that says, thank you for buying from us. And of course, you can do that. Tell them and thank them for the SMS. There is also the question of feedback. I think there was someone. We are now dealing with the challenge of our anchor challenge around communication. Communication and engagement. That's the problem domain that we want to address. And the reason why we are doing that is because we are coming with, as part of the context, there are systems that are already in place that we can take advantage of to fix these guys' challenges. So we know bakers have a lot of challenges, but we want to create a small tool that they can use for their communication and engagement. And of course, as they do communication and engagements, the ultimate effect is to grow their business by being organized. By being organized and ensuring that they don't miss on opportunity. So that's it. So we have order for notifications, thank you message, feedback, being able to get feedback from the customers on the services offered. So that one we can do that, and we can do a survey from a certain provider, and yeah, we can basically get feedback from that. Then there is also, they would love to be reminded of potential sales for next year based on the historical data. For the future, based on historical data. So the question is, you made a sale on July 15th to one guy called Molly Princess, to one lady, beautiful girl called Princess Molly. So you made a sale on July 15th, and you want 2022. And we want in 2023, you would love to make the sale. Would like the customer to make the sale. We'd like the cake, the business to make another sale. People forget easily, huh? With a lot of data, you can forget easily. Now, I don't know whether there is another challenge that you see we can help them in terms of the reminding them. What else? And if this can happen for the anniversary. Anniversary. So what else? Okay. So we need to figure out this. Now, the quick question is, and allow us now to look at how businesses are created. And this content will be available online. So we are doing it because there are many ideas that people can solve, but we'll use this example to help us appreciate what we can solve. One of the things that I would like to ask you is, let's consider whether this can be a business. Is this a potential business? So we have started with the bakers. Yes. But the bakers could be home bakers. Someone can guess. We will get from the data, but they could be in thousands. And home bakers, they could be in thousands. That one at least we know. And these guys in thousands, we could help them build a brand by ensuring that they engage with their, branded SMSs and all that. In addition to that, we will help them in just sending out SMSs. Now, where is the business? Some of you might be wondering. Now, I do not want to dive deeper into the whole opportunity about the business opportunity, but I'll challenge you guys just in a basic computation. Let's assume a baker is willing to pay just Kenya shillings 100 per month for the service. Now, if you get 1,000 bakers, you're looking at 100K per month. And that's just the anchor products. And these guys will be doing very little. If you get 10,000 bakers, then you can get to 1 million per month. So I'm just highlighting and telling you guys, you can actually create a system and make little money. I know this is, to some organizations, this is very little money and there is no business case, but you're using these as a tool to help guys remember what they need to remember. And you can start with one anchor user, then later you can try and figure out how you can go out to the public. Now, why are we saying the bakers? Because the bakers, we know maybe they don't have a challenge of paying that amount. But you can imagine if we were to remind you of your friend's birthday, which is a use case that we could consider, and consider now you as a general person, finding out whether this is a service that someone could be interested, then we know that that could give us a huge number. But how do you get guys on board? I think bakers have real challenges than you forgetting your birthday. So there is higher conversion rate if you are to consider this as a use case for the bakers. And this is what I want you guys to go and validate. Would these guys be willing to use such a service? Would they be willing to pay for such a service? So that's the challenge that we have at hand. So the question is, as you go and talk to the baker, because we need to get feedback from you, talk to a baker, share the idea of communication and engagement, the element of the customer engagement, reminders to the baker. Customer engagement is on orders, you can trigger a communication. And then you can come and on orders, you can also save the record for the reminder. There are people who also want to be reminded of orders. I think this one I didn't. You have an order and you want to be reminded. So someone has ordered a cake for next year, next month on August 2022. Sorry, next month, November. I'm still in July. So 2022, and you want to be reminded. So those are the use cases. So what we'll do with Marlene after this, we can send you just a brief. Now we are just thinking wild, and you see, you don't have to start with a written thing. All you want to do is to dive into the space of that baker and see whether there is anything you can do in this space of communication. Now, talk to a baker, share an idea, communicate, find out whether they're happy to be served, or this challenge, if they were solved, would they be willing to pay? And you can find out how much they are willing to pay for this service per month. Let them put it as on a per month basis. Is that okay? Are we together up to there?
Yes.
Awesome. So we are together. So we know that we have a baker who has challenges, a home baker. Don't think of this bake, is it bake in or something, or even cake city. Those are not home bakers. We have a home baker who has challenges in engaging with their customers. So they send a text later, but we want to make the process automated so that when you deliver, so engaging delivery, thank you messages. What are the messages? Maybe order messages telling them we have received your order and we are happy to serve you. What else? Yes, so we also need to get feedback. Can you do a survey after the delivery? This is something that we can build. So they just go and give us score after sales survey. And we've talked about reminders for orders delivered in that are repetitive orders or anniversary-based orders. E.g., in our company, we have we do birthday cakes for people, and now that they're at home, it will be delivered to their home. But then the person who receives that information, they actually need to ensure that they have all that information and they can be reminded every month, so that if our HR person doesn't place the order, the baker can actually do that. Is there value in that? Personally, I'm not a baker. I feel like there is value, but we need to validate it with the real users. Now, what are we trying to do? We want to improve how home bakers engage with their customers. So we just want to make things efficient. So we want to start with basically notifications driven use case. So then other products can come in later. Because one of the things that I want you guys to do is you'll go share the idea of this. Would they be willing to pay? How much are they willing to pay for the service per month? And what are their biggest problems? What are their biggest challenges? Now, one of the things that we will mention, another idea that will be implemented by a team, we don't know how we will commercialize this. We might look for partners and commercialize with you guys because some of these things, we have some good engagements with the media houses, specifically some of the leading media houses. Here we partner with them in some ways. Maybe they could just like this idea and just advertising on TV, and it can become a real product. But what we need to know is that we must have a real user. We have to validate this thing against. Now, so I have written this, I've written, Julisha, a lot of notes. They're not structured. What I will tell you is that in problem solving, you just have to have a lot of conversations. I know we are in a Zoom call, we are not having a lot of conversations, but it's always good to start with a whiteboard and have people give inputs of what they believe this thing is. And if possible, get the user into that boardroom and let us write whatever that we are writing on the whiteboard. As you discover the challenge, you need to watch out and ensure that you don't dive into a space that is not very relevant. Like I would give you an example. There was someone who said about ovens do break. Yes, they do, but in the context of the area, because we must start with an area that something that we think that we could do, an area that we want to address, because maybe some people are interested in finance element of things. The others were interested in customer engagement and customer value management. Like that's an area we are very passionate about as a company. That's why what you're discussing is very opinionated, but you have to set a limit into what not to discuss so that they don't tell you that their biggest challenge is school fees. And then you get into a bigger issue and then you discover instead of building a technology solution, maybe you just need to start a church because the society is rotten and all these things are as a cause. So you also need to watch out so that you don't get off the track and now start discussing other things that might not be relevant. Not to say that sometimes you might get a light bulb moment, when you are trying to do that. But the key idea is to have not one session, but have multiple sessions and with possible different users. Then you look at the intersection, you look at what is the biggest pain that they have today. So, and you can do the same with a bank and come up with a product that is relevant. You can do this process with anything because we are saying that you're becoming problem solver. So we just want to be in the space where problems do exist. Now, the person that we have to consider is the baker, is the main person. But we also have to consider the customer who buys the cake. Now, I'm getting into another space. You have to identify the users that you're going to look at. So who will be the users of the system? The baker will use the system. And you'll also have the customer will use the system. Will interact. Allow me to just say interact with the system. Yes. So Amos, this is a good question that you're asking. And how much can the service cost? Most bakers will consider this before taking up the idea. So initially, Amos, and this is, unfortunately, we are making decisions to build a service without having done a lot of validation. But if you are starting a business or you have ideas, it's always good to have a list of maybe 5 ideas in your space. Or even one idea, but different users who can look at it. And then you consider the service cost element. And the service cost element is not something that we decide. It's something that the bakers will decide. I'll tell you, Amos, that I mentioned 100 bob per month. And these 100 bob, you can position it as an example. I don't want to give the figure. But almost one of the things that we need to consider is that the service cost does matter. But the key idea is to go and find out whether this is a problem and how big of a problem is it. Because if the problem is not big for them, or they don't derive so much value from this, then they might not consider even paying for the service. So the headache, Amos, is to go and talk to your baker, find out first whether the problem is real, or there is a certain flavor that we need to get, and whether they're willing to pay for the service. The only thing that you have to guide them is to tell them we are considering them paying the service per month. And they can tell you I'm willing to pay 10 bob. But from where I sit, home bakers charge a cake for anything 1,000 to 3,000 per kg, depending on the target market they have. And they could be receiving 5 or 4 orders in a month, or 6 orders or 10 orders in a month. And definitely, in my view, if I was to price the product at 100 bob, I don't know whether it's sustainable for you to price the product at 100 bob. But the key idea is to come up with a product, get a real user, and see how that would work out. So there is a lot of business aspect that you have to consider when you're doing this. But it doesn't rule out that the problem is real. Right, Amos?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, we're in the initial phase. We can rule this thing out after we listen to the bakers, Amos. Yeah?
I think one question we'll be asking when we go to the bakers is how much are they losing from these challenges they're facing?
Thank you.
That we see how much we save them.
Thank you. Now you're a salesperson. Because you have to paint what are they losing by not having this. In terms of brand management, that SMS makes a whole difference. If a guy delivers a cake to you and once they deliver, you get an SMS telling you, thank you, that is branded, and maybe with a link to do feedback. It's not just, not getting feedback is dangerous for any business. So you can go with that element. 2, not engaging your customers and telling them thank you does not touch their hearts. So you can touch their heart by just sending that thank you message so that they know you care. And you can always have these reminders so that you can call the guy 1 month. I know your birthday is coming. I hope that what are the plans? Can we serve you? Can we make your birthday an exciting thing? And those conversations could grow the business. Yeah. But I'm not here to justify why the product needs to come. So bakers will use the system. and they are the main users. My assumption is that they'll have the channels of interactions are one. In the initial, probably idea is they have a web app that is mobile friendly. That's the assumption. And that's based on the classification of the user. They either have a phone or they have a laptop, but at least we know bakers have a smartphone. I'm yet to meet one without a smartphone. So, and of course, technology, we might not do a lot of ESSD unless these guys are in the village and they have kabam. But 90% of the bakers, or 95%, they have smartphones. So they'll also be interacting with the SMS channel. That's another thing that you need to consider. So the SMS channel, this will be sending them notifications via SMS to them or email, just giving or any other service, etc. Tomorrow you could be doing, one day you could be doing WhatsApp, so that you remind them on WhatsApp. Just the technology is not limited to the channel. So that's it. For the customers, I foresee a scenario where the system will interact with them. The customer will interact with the system, but passive. So I think the customer will interact with the system either by receiving notifications. And these notifications could be the thank you messages that we are looking at. And then the other idea that we think is that they'll also interact with the system in giving feedback. Now, when I am giving feedback, trust you me, sometimes it's so difficult to not think of how as you're discussing the problem. So that danger does exist, although some people will tell you don't think of the how when you're understanding the requirements. But for me, when I say feedback and an idea of the how comes, I just record it. Because giving feedback could be the SMS could contain a link. This is the how. And you click on that link, you go to a web app or a page, you give your feedback and you rate them on a scale of 1 to 9. Are you happy? Would you recommend them to the customers and all that? And then you do that. So you're driving customer service and customer value management for these guys. Now, the other area, you could also do an SMS via Shortcode. I know some of you interactive surveying. This is also the how, and it's a possibility. We are not sticking to the how at this particular point. Now, because we are within a certain context, we are in the context of customers have phones. I think here we didn't mention that. Users have phones or email addresses. Yeah, and they can receive. This is a property of a user who we didn't talk about a lot, their characteristics. I think these guys have a phone and can receive an SMS. And then they also have what? They also have they have a phone and they can receive an SMS. They also have they have a phone. They have a smartphone. Trust you me, and can access a web. To fill in a survey. The assumption is that if you're paying 1,500 for a cake from a home baker, because home bakers are normally more expensive than neighbors from experience, but they can have maybe arguably different quality from the large scale production of cakes. So sometimes you will find the home bakers do something very nice. So you could pay more because of that. One of the things that you will need to note is that why are we mentioning these characteristics? Because they influence the design. So when we are talking about the requirements, the users will not tell you, but sometimes you ask these questions. How will the users access the system? What are you envisioning? Whoever is telling you the idea, what are you envisioning? Like, I know there is a solution that you're supposed to work with some organization that does coaching, professional coaching. And they would tell you that my customers, I coach the senior, middle managers and senior managers of the big companies in the region. So that fact alone tells you about what you can give. If they have to interact with the system, then you have to provide an access channel that is fit for them. So don't tell the CEO of Safaricom to do USSD to book an appointment with a coach. But if they have the phone, you can do a web app, you can do an app on the phone and they can download and use it. And of course, you have to have questions of whether they use this product every day. Because if they don't use it on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, they don't access it, then don't do an app, in my view. If they use it frequently, do an app because it gives a better experience. And because of the frequency of use, they can install. Now, here we are talking about the environment that we are looking at and the context. I'll talk about what other systems, what are the actors and systems in the environment. Now, here we are still trying to frame and thinking about how the solution is supposed to work. Here we are just doing requirement modeling, identifying who has a problem and what problem are they facing. And we are still now trying to think of a solution in the context. Today, in the session that I was attending, I had a conversation and told guys back in 2007, I was in campus, and my father used to send money from Nakuru into MK or Mololine, and I come and pick the exact note from his pocket, somewhere in Nyamakema, Nairobi. And the environment and the actors were the people, but still as part of the environment, there was a technology that could have solved the problem. There was a thing called a SIM card that could allow the guy to give the money to the guys in Nyamakema. And then I come and pick the money immediately after that in Nairobi, in Nakuru, and I receive the money in Nyamakema. So essentially all you needed to introduce are two agents. Today we call them M-Pesa agents or mobile money agents. And my father would give the money there. And these guys would transfer the message electronically to this other side. And because of that, now I can go pick the money. But technology has advanced that even my father today just sends me the money directly to my wallet and I can withdraw. Or, sorry, not now, but at that time, he used to send me the money once M-Pesa came and all the other technologies came. But we have to think about the context or the environment in the actors. So the actors or the people are basically the bakers and the customers. So those are people that will interact with our system. Either interaction doesn't have to do, you have to log in. You could receive a message that you're supposed to respond to, and that's an interaction. So you could be notified or you could interact with the system. Thank you, Waidaka. Yes, you are right in your assumption. Today, it's the other way around, payback time. I'm the one who sends the money to the guy, to the old man, because he has retired. He's a senior citizen. So we go there for wisdom, but then we send the money, wisdom transfer. So the home bakers are, these are human actors. And then you also have the messaging platforms. So in this case, as of now, we have just thought about two. We have the SMS gateway that would allow us to forward an SMS to a customer. And we also have an email server that would allow us to send emails to customers. Now, when I say that, I mean that this is the actors, the context, the other elements in the context. I don't know whether there is anything else. Some of you could say, you know, I want to use an authentication server, that maybe I want to use Google server for authentication. That's another thing. Remember, we are discussing, and this could be because maybe we have an opinion that we should not have a username and password set for this guy. Yes, should not be local. So those are some of the experiences that you're, because you don't want the guy to keep on remembering their part. So they can sign in with what? With either Google or they can sign in with Facebook, right? For those of you who know OAuth 2, OpenID, all those stuff that are around just ensuring that we delegate the function of authentication to another server, could be another system you have to connect. So I'm just sharing these ideas because even in your other ideas that you'll be working on, you have to think in this frame. Yes, so I've just talked about the environment, the actors, and the systems in the environment that you can take advantage of. And now one of the things that you have to do as you are writing down, I know you guys are people of agile delivery and all that, but I would like to just take a small break there for about 7 minutes. And what you're going to do is now to come and formulate these and put them as our basic requirements for this system. Team, please confirm if you are there. I think we can start. So I have done something because we have to think when we are talking about requirement modeling, first is to understand who it helps. We have to adopt a certain structure of thinking and structure of questioning the domain of the problem. And we are going to record that in our document. So we had done a document earlier with Marlin and another team. Some of you could be here. But there is a document called SRS. I know some of you guys don't like documenting. So SRS is essentially software requirement specification. So you'll hear SRSs in some organizations. Some corporates talk about BRDs or business requirements definition or document. So if you are an SRS or BRD, other guys, they just incorporate everything and they say SDD, software design document, and they incorporate everything so that it can be approved. But at some point, when you work in the corporate sector, you'll have to do a certain document. Though the agile guys, there could be other ways of doing documentation that doesn't take us back to waterfall. But for a new product, I would like to beg you guys that you have to put something together if you have to collaborate. So there is a document. This document has certain chapters that have been highlighted, and you don't have to worry about it because we'll take you guys briefly through each of the section. But now we will use what we have identified in our problem statement to actually populate this document. So if you go to, this is a document we had done for SMSC project. I think that was the project which we did some times back. And what I'll do is I'll go to each chapter and we are going to fill in what we have. So the introduction, we talk about the purpose. And the purpose of this document is to specify the requirements for the SMSC project. So this one, you're expected to, the intro, introduction, you'll have the purpose. And you'll also talk about the product scope. And you will also talk about the definition of the definitions. If you have to define something, like someone might not be aware what an SMS is, or acronyms and abbreviations. Yeah, so in this section, I will not talk about much about what you're supposed to do, because the purpose is we want to build a customer engagement platform for the bakers. The platform will be used in ensuring that the bakers, the platform will be used in ensuring that the bakers communicate, communicate and get feedback from bakers. So we'll ensure that the bakers, that's number one. So the bakers can communicate and get feedback from customers. It will also act as a tool to remind them of future events, e.g. orders. You need to be reminded that Saturday you have an order, maybe 3 days before, and the potential sales. So get feedback from the customer. So essentially that's the purpose of it. And of course, the scope will also mention of, actually what we'll do is the scope is essentially this. So that's what we are looking at. It will be a web app we are considering building a web app to start with, because we've not taught you guys how to do Android apps, but later you can do that. So we'll
Kamucha,
do, yes.
somebody's asking if you're sharing a screen.
Oh my gosh, I've not been sharing my screen all through. So apologies, forgive me. So I have to go back a bit. I've said that there is an SRS document. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Awesome. So there is an SRS document that we had done for the SMSC project. And the sections here, they are defined by a body called the IEEE, the body that does Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. So they have an SRS template. You can go and download it, and software requirements specification templates. So if you go download it, you'll discover that some of the sections that I'm highlighting here are actually part of that. Of course, the world has moved a bit, but there is also something that we can borrow in terms of the process. Yeah, so if you'll come here, you'll see you're supposed to have the purpose, scope, intended audience, scope, overall description, external interfaces, system features, non-functional, and other things that you need to do. So you can Google this, and if you Google, you can just Google that, and you can look at how the SRS is done. Of course, what I'm saying is that the world has shifted a bit. The SRSs and too much documentation was wired towards waterfall, but total disregard of what they were doing is also a bad idea. So you need to apply wisdom. So what I was saying is that we have this, the purpose is we want to build a customer engagement platform. Thanks, Steve, for highlighting that I was not sharing the screen. Bakers can communicate and get feedback from the customers, and can be a tool to remind bakers of the future events that they need to talk about. So basically reminders for orders that they have to fulfill and potential customers that they have to do that. So it can be used to just communicate, confirm order placed, and then it can also be used for what? Confirm an order that has been placed. You can also get feedback from the customers. You can also confirm delivered orders. So when you place an order, you could get an SMS that your order has been received, and this is the amount, and this is how to pay. So the content of this would be, and I know I'm going back up there to discuss, but so here when you're confirming the order is just confirming the confirmed delivery dates, price, and payment details. Now, this one is basically to tell them thank you, message, and what else? Inform them, and feedback link. Is that okay? Yeah. So here, a tool for reminders. You're reminding them an order that has been placed. So maybe there is an order for next week on Thursday. They remind you every day. Or we remind baker 3 days to the D day, the delivery day. And then you can also future sale, remind them maybe 2 weeks to the birthday, or maybe 1 month and 2 weeks to the birth date. 1 month and 2 weeks to the birthday. So we have seen the scope. I hope you guys are diving into the problem domain. So we have seen that, and you know the purpose. Now, there is a section called product perspective. Now we are in chapter 2. Abbreviations, I'll not talk about that. So when you're talking about the product scope, on chapter 1, you are supposed to mention what it will entail. So it will entail building a web app. Yeah, ensuring that it will entail building a web app. So the scope will be building a web app that will allow bakers that will allow, then you mentioned that. Then the other one is integration to messaging platform. So that we will be sending notifications via SMS and email. So that's it. So I hope you are walking the journey together. And before we go for lunch, we need to have figured out that. Now, product perspective. Product perspective, if you go to perspective, it's a thing that you need to have. Go look at for IEEE document. And the product perspective, you need to say, there are three parts in this product. There are three parts. The parts, they are called Northbound Actors. Then there is the system itself, the new platform or solution, what you're creating, and then two, you'll also have the Southbound Actors. So people at the bottom. So Northbound Actors is people who come to you. So systems and people who connect to you. And Southbound Actors are systems you connect to. So when you're doing the diagram, that they're called, some people could be inbound, outbound. Sometimes there is no mistake. There is no issue in making a mistake and putting something here, as long as you don't miss the point that there is a system that either is connecting to you or you're connecting to it. So this is a good example of a context diagram for those of you who did system analysis and design, but it's paint the picture of everything that will interact with what you're creating. Because a solution, you don't work in isolation. So here, we will also identify that this is our application. So for now, it's normally a black box. So you don't break it. We will break it into parts during the low level, high level design, high level and low level design. So we are, and I want you guys to think about this model, and we use it to, we apply it in building other solutions. It has worked for us, and the people we have built solutions for, they are still our customers. And this includes even big banks and telcos. So it's good to see that what you're doing it's something that you could consider for application. Yeah. So Northbound Actors here, we will have a human, a user. So you'll have a user. The first guy, the Northbound Actor, is a baker. That's a user. And another person who will be at the top there, who might interact with the system, is the customer. And that's a user. And then, is there any other system that needs to talk to our platform? At this particular point, I don't see a scenario, but imagine one day we might receive payments into our platform, because there could be a function to handle payments. Right now, we're just in orders, notifications. We are just telling them, pay to this number or pay through this till number, but you're not processing the M-Pesa payment. But assume one day you are supposed to process M-Pesa payments, and the M-Pesa payment would actually send a thank you message to the customer. Let's hypothetically think of that scenario. And now we can call this solution a fintech solution, if you guys like being in the space of fintech innovation. But you can just add an element of payment, and you say this is the Uber for bakers, and you do you get a lot of funds. But for now, the key idea is, if there are other systems that need to connect to you as triggers, like someone can place an order, that's a baker. Someone can do something, that's another thing. Another system can trigger an event on our side, e.g. the payment to a pay bill, and M-Pesa could send a notification to us. And after we get that notification, we go and mark that the order has been paid. And once we mark that the order has been paid, we now send the SMS to thank the customer. If they made a part payment, then we just come and record that this is a part payment. And the fact that it's a part payment, we can send an SMS to the customer telling them, thank you for making a deposit payment. You have paid 1,000, you have a balance of 500, and thank you for choosing KCAD for argument's sake. So you can think of northbound actors as either humans or systems. I don't want to belabor that point and bore you a bit. So let's go to the southbound systems. So the southbound systems, because this is an internal system, it doesn't do a lot of interactions. It's like Facebook. Most of the interactions are internal, but we know that if you have to send SMSs, you have to connect to the SMS gateway. So in this case, we can talk about what we do as Meliora, and we can use now Tiara Connect. I know Jeremy will be very happy to see this video. So we can connect to Tiara Connect, which has just an API for sending SMS. So as part of the guys who will be doing this project, you can actually create a system that sends out SMS. You'll also connect to the email server for sending SMS, sending email. In this one, you can connect to maybe Google email servers for sending email. Yeah, so if you want to connect to Google servers, all you need is maybe it will come from info@julisha.com if there is such a thing. I'm just thinking. So you can register on Google Apps and you have an email and you connect to the Google email servers and you can send emails. What other system do we need to connect to from the conversations here? We might also need to connect to authentication servers. I think we had mentioned that. And I'm mentioning these, I'm jumping the gun because I have gone ahead to a non-functional requirement where we are saying that we do not want to keep users, password and usernames. We will just connect using the social logins. Or the sign up via Google, we can also do sign up via Facebook. For a start, we can start with this. Now, why? Because storing passwords is a headache, and asking the user to enter their names is also a headache. You can use data service from there. Now, once we have talked about the various elements in the system, and you can mention the purpose of each. So you can draw now this diagram. With this, you can draw the diagram and you can describe. What's the purpose of the baker? The baker is the one who interacts with the portal, the web app, and does 1, 2, 3. The customer has 2 functions, either receives notifications passively, or they can engage with the system to do surveys. So we are happy. System, as of now, is a black box, candidate for breaking into many parts, and that's now the design phase. Southbound interfaces, we are connecting to the SMS gateway, the email server, and authentication server. At that particular point, you guys can draw the context diagram. Yes. If one day we add an element for M-Pesa payment, because I know some guys will, I have a till number already, and I want guys to just pay through till, and I don't want to tell them thank you. I just want the system to work for me. Once the customer has made a payment, as they pay on the till, we're going to come and check whether they have an existing order, and you're going to record that payment against that order and thank them and tell them the balance. At that particular point, the customers might introduce another capability called now the payments. So at that point, you'll have to integrate to now the payment gateways or the payment systems that are out there that could help us in working on this. Is that okay? Yeah. So the next thing still under chapter 2, we have the product perspective, and we have said the first thing is the product, the overall, this actually the chapter is overall description. So here we are describing the solution in detail. Why are we doing this? Because we have the thing is the guys who will develop this solution do not necessarily have to be on this call today. Ideally, it's good that they be involved from the beginning, but we do document because the people who will develop and the ones who are discussing this could be very different. So here we are the analysts or the system analyst, business analyst, and we are just recording what the user wants. So the product perspective we have highlighted. So we have the product functions. So here, this is where we list the product functions as far as the user is concerned. So we can say that the product functions a baker should, you list them as a user story for those of you, just what a user can do. A baker should be able to place an order on a system. The nitty-gritties of placing an order we'll discuss later. Then you can say a baker should be able to record, to mark an order as delivered. Then I can say a baker should be able to record a payment against an order. So this is what we are now thinking of, the use cases, the functions that the system should be able to help. And of course, as part of these, as we described, we will also describe in details and what will happen. So as we describe in details, now you start seeing the system. And you're supposed to see the system before you write any code. And you're supposed to see how everything is supposed to work. Then we can say a baker should. What else do we have remaining? A baker should be able to, from what we have been discussing, to receive a notification. What you can test there, or order reminders, should receive order reminders. So we should be able to receive, a baker should receive, should be able to receive a reminder for a potential sale. I don't know how to call it, but potential sale. So here we are just coming here, and you can record this in that order. We are thinking of the journey from functionalities the system should be able to provide based on the envisioned journey. So you should be able to place an order for a customer. You should be able to record an order against, to record a payment against an order. You should be able to mark an order as delivered. Those two are independent. The assumption is that you could actually pay, the customer could pay, then you deliver, but sometimes you could find you deliver, then the customer pays later, but you should be able to have those events there. Then a baker should be able to receive order reminders. And then the other thing, a baker should be able to receive a reminder for a potential sale. This is repeat business, potential repeat business. Yeah, from last year's sales, you can ensure that you lock the customers for next year. Now, this is what my brother Kinodia was talking about, that we need to take care of. Is it Kinodia? Almost, yes. Yeah. So you need to frame that in this. So the other thing that we should be able, a customer should receive order notification. When they place an order, we can send a notification to the customer. A customer should receive payment notification. And the customer should receive what else? Customer should receive delivery notification. Is a thank you message and feedback link. Is that okay? Yeah. So what else have we said that I have left out? Amos, is there anything you are seeing that we have been discussing and have not mentioned as part of the functions? So there is no true way of doing this and a wrong way of doing this. Sometimes it's always good that you figure out what you need to do. There is no wrong way or a right way of doing this. So I'll mention that and I'll leave it up to that point. At this point, we are highlighting the functions at a high level. Then you have the users and their characteristics. And I can see characteristics. Now the users, you have the baker and you have the customer. Now, when you say characteristics, you're supposed to come and give the characteristics, what the access channels they're supposed to do, access channel. So these guys will interact with SMS and web. And what will be they doing? They are basically, you can look at the characteristics and you can say that these guys are basically, they'll be placing, you can give characteristics that can help so they can access the system. They're the main user of the system. And can access the system via web portal. So that's it. Yeah, so let's see what else you need to do. So here we can say they'll have an access channel. They can do access channels. So these guys will primarily receive SMSs and they can do web. And this one is just for feedback. So they don't need to log in and view statements. No, it's not part of the requirements. One day if they come, then later you'll add and say, you know, as I mean, why should I log into the baker's systems? I'm not interested as a customer of a baker. But if you see a scenario where one day they would love to, you see a use case for them, then you can do that. But for now, our anchor user is the baker who brings the customer on board. Now, there is operating environment. You are also required to give characteristics of operating environment. Maybe you are constrained in terms of things that here we have none, but we could, the key thing is the solution could be cloud native. Yeah, sometimes you're told our solution should only work with Oracle Linux environment, so it should be deployed on the cloud. So that could be a requirement in terms of the operating environment under which the system will be operating. Design and implementation considerations. Now, one of the things that I'll highlight very fast, and if you have any questions, please ask, because this is something that you have to do and apply for any of the solutions that you create. Now, one of the things that you will consider is that sometimes a company could have some design architect, or there could be an architectural blueprint that you have to use, architectural blueprint that you have to use. So if, let's say, for example, you have been told that all APIs, they need to be non-blocking or 1, 2, 3. For now, let's not highlight anything. For now, let's say none, meaning that you have the leeway to design the solution anyway. But of course, if you go in an organization, you might have something. So user documentation that you have to provide. This is, remember, you are telling these guys, traditionally we used to say, you know, you have to provide a user guide, you have to provide a SRS, or the architecture document needs to be provided. And then you have the user guide, which I don't think it's necessary. Your system should be easy to use. And of course, you have to provide a technical operations guide. How do I start the server and stuff like that? So because the builder of the system and the operator of the system, the person who supports it on a day-to-day basis, comes together. So assumptions and notifications, assumptions and dependencies is another element that you need to say. And here we can say none. Because I want, before we take a break, I want us to at least get to the section where we talk about external interfaces. Now, remember, we are creating a system, and we, the guys who are working on this thing, are not necessarily the guys who will develop this. So we have gotten the overall description. If someone cannot understand what you're doing by reading this chapter on overall description, then you, as the person who is stating the problem, have done something wrong. So someone should just come and scan through this section of your documentation and know that we are able to deal with everything that we have So I will go back and I'll mention a few things because our problems are simple. Sometimes, let me give you an example. I was part of the guys who are working on the new M-Pesa system. This M-Pesa system that used to do. I don't know whether you guys pre-2015, we used to have M-Pesa system running outside Kenya. I will not state which country because I have not asked for permission to disclose that, but it was somewhere outside Kenya, and the network latency evolution was a challenge. That's when people knew robots without bots that were not the bots that you know today. We used to have guys creating systems that could go to a web page and click a button automated, not using Selenium for those guys who know QA stuff. But the key idea was the context, the process we are following could actually be followed in M-Pesa system, as huge as it is, as it integrates to many systems. It's only that the scope and the conversations and the interfaces will be many. Because I'll tell you, email is a small one. Airtime, integration to banks, integration to the ERP if you're paying for something. All those integrations are too many. I was working as the lead engineer in the integration stream. So I can tell you that the POS devices, the ERP, I mean, all these things needed to be integrated with M-Pesa. And you had to do a lot of documentation for you to ensure that you don't miss out anything. Because if you miss out anything and the new systems comes in place, then you have an issue. So, but the key thing I want to highlight to you is that if you follow this process, you can actually do a lot. Now, external interface requirements. I know you guys created the APIs, and that's why we told you guys to work on APIs so that we don't get into this phase and we talk about foreign language. So there are user interfaces that are going to be created. External means, you remember this diagram, the context diagram. So if you didn't highlight anything here in this context diagram, where is it? The product perspective, what I also call context diagram. All these external things that we have here, they must interface with us. Those interfaces are sometimes what we call the APIs. So that API for send SMS, it's a JSON API with a payload of the first parameter is from, and you put the send ID. 2, you put the mobile number. Content, you put the actual content to go out, and any other parameter. The creator of the API gives you the specifications. So by the time you're bringing the new system, the assumption is this: the email service, the SMS service, those systems do exist. So what you're going to do here is to specify what interfaces are we going to use for that. So we'll come and look at the hardware interfaces. Now, sometimes here we'll do none. We are not doing anything hardware specific, but sometimes you might be working on a system that requires to talk to a certain hardware. Maybe you need to do monitoring through PCMI or something like that. Maybe HP servers, you need to do something on the HP servers. E.g., let's say, for example, you have been told you're working on the system that AWS uses to provision servers on demand. So I'm sure at that particular point, they have certain interfaces that they have to talk to a CPU, to talk and request maybe for certain things to be done, or even an interface to go and check whether the disk is okay, is healthy or not healthy. So at that particular point, you'll be told you have to connect with this kind of hardware element or equipment, and this is the language of talking to it. So here in this case, we don't have any, so we have software interfaces. In our diagram, remember, it sounds like you're repeating, but it's looking at the same data from a different perspective. Now, the user interfaces, we have the web, and we have the SMS, but this is passive. Passive, maybe SMS. We can discuss on what you're going to use. So most Baker interactions will be done on the web. Yes, and then the SMS, you will also notifications. It's an interface because you are communicating through that. So those are user interfaces that the user will see. But now let's look at the software interfaces. Which systems are we connecting to the SMS gateway? So the SMS gateway will give you a HTTP API that is REST. Now, for this case, I will not mention, ideally, I'm supposed to get from Jeremiah, from our team, we'll give you the API specification for this. Now, for the email server, we will connect via the standard SMTP protocol or the SMTP protocol interface. Now, SMTP protocol is the simple mail transfer protocol. Sorry, I was trying to figure out what is that. I was about to say short message. So it's simple mail transfer protocol. So that's the thing that we need to know. Now, which other system are we connecting to? That's where you need to get the initial part very clear. So we will go now to the authentication server. Servers, and this is Google. I will leave that for us to confirm. And then you have maybe Facebook, because these guys are on Facebook. And I'm assuming the Facebook account is used for Meta. Will be used for Snapchat and stuff like that, because I believe you have one account for all the Facebook related services that you have. Any other system that you have not been given. So if you'd go to Facebook, you'd find out how they do it. Or if you're not a guy who is going to develop these things, you'll use a library that allows you to connect to Facebook out of the box, another layer of abstraction. Now, I know time is not on our side, but just allow me, guys, to just mention one more thing that we have not highlighted, which is the communication interfaces. We'll say none. In this case, communication interfaces, you can go look at what communication interfaces that are needed. So here we have none for now, because all our interfaces are software interfaces. And then finally, you go now to the non-functional requirements, or the functional requirements is basically a section which we are not going to discuss right now. We'll discuss it in another phase. But I want to say that for every function above, every function needs to be explained in detail. In details. So, e.g., when you place an order, what happens? So that function from a user expectation, from an experience perspective, needs to be explained in details. And this is something that you're going to work on together. Then finally, we have non-functional requirements. And the only non-functional requirement that I can see here is that the authentication would be via social plugins. So here we are going to use Google and Meta for authentication. If Safaricom had their own OpenID, we could connect to OpenID. So non-functional, we will talk about all the non-functional that you have, but there are certain things that you have here that are required, monitoring, reporting, security and throttling. We have to discuss those. Traffic distribution, high availability, scalability, extendability, API design, data support, and then software quality attributes that we have to look at. Then business rules that are there. Anything else you write there. So if you dissect your problem using this structure, which we have already given to you in this video, then what I can promise is that you're in a journey to help us now move to the next step of the design. Please take note, as you step into the design phase, there are things that you will always find that are very common. You cannot say that you got the requirements fully and right until you start doing the design. Then you discover that you have other questions that you have to ask. So it is normal in the style of agility for you to actually look at everything solution. You critique the solution design against the requirements. And then after that, you do 1, 2, 3 to confirm that everything is okay. And you can always go back and update something that is now has been added because of the design conversation. So the whole process before writing code, and even during the writing of code, things can change, but they should not change drastically. Otherwise, you'll get into something called a scope creep, and that allows you not to deliver anything. So you need to be careful of scope creep, but whatever things, you need to be aware that things can get out of hand. So you need to watch out. so that someone now doesn't introduce a new requirement that was not part of the scope and it changes the delivery and delivers the product very late. That's why we adopt the concept of minimum viable product. What is the most minimum thing that you can give to the user for them to run with the product? So I don't know whether there is anyone with a question, but we have come to the end of this session. So I wanted to hear whether there is anyone with a comment or feedback. I would allow you guys to ask a question, but I cannot see any question on the chat. So I'll allow maybe two of you guys to give a comment or say something. Yeah. Then we break for lunch. I want by 15 we are out of here. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes and then we can agree on what next. When do we meet again? Because this is something that we need to continue. We need to finish probably by Friday, if not by Friday, by Monday. And then we can now start giving you the challenges and you can apply the same process for your own challenges. So by Friday, I think we need to give you this. And then on Monday, we can give you a task to work on a challenge that we'll have given you. And then you can use that challenge for the conversations. Mfadhili, do you have any questions?
As of now, I have none, but I am trying to understand the process of, I'm just trying to understand this process and how it can also be leveraged on other projects. So it's a universal procedure, and it's a good one actually. It exposes the problem well, and I think should be documented and should be used more often. It's a good procedure.
Asante. Actually, Mfadhili, the key thing we are teaching you is to start by thinking it's just a process. And I think that's what we said in the day one, because you guys know how to write code. The process is the most important thing. It doesn't mean that this is the only process, but we always find it good to start thinking of who has a problem and what do they want to do, or how can we fix it? And that's the question that we've asked today. The how and the experience will be clearer as we proceed. So I'm hoping that by Friday, we'll have moved steps ahead in terms of this conversation. And I'm hoping that you guys could actually allocate Friday as a day. If you guys are open to having the call tomorrow, by the way, I'm also because during the days like today, I have received a lot of distraction. But if you guys are available tomorrow, we could actually do another session. If you consult within the groups and we find out whether we can do another 2 hours. And I hope that we can shift from just requirement modeling, because we have seen at least a way of ensuring that you document your problem and ensure that we're doing a bit of requirement modeling. We're using the SRS. And now the next thing we'll ask now is the architecture. As we refine the requirements, you'll discover that you cannot talk about the requirements sometimes without talking about the process, because a bank teller will tell you how the process is today. So the system is supposed to come and complement the same. Though process modeling can be in design, sometimes process modeling can also be part of the analysis, because some of the systems we implement, they have to follow a specific standard process. So at that particular point, the process stops becoming an algorithm that is a design in the design phase, and it becomes a requirement that you have to comply to in the design and the development phase. So that's the thing that we want to do. But my hope is that by Friday, if we decide to have a team work on these things, they can actually, we will have known what APIs we need to expose for what. And I'll get you guys the API for send SMS, and we will have it ready and we'll put it as part of the document so that the developers can reference one thing when they are developing. So I hope you can see how these conversations are helpful in terms of the collaboration. Is that okay, Bwana Mfadhili Gitau?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay. Maybe one more person. I don't know whether there was someone who wants to give a comment. So Barongo, a lady, to speak on behalf of the descendants of Sarai.
I guess I'm just trying to appreciate the entire systems analysis and design process.
Mm.
It's very easy to jump into writing code for something without actually having a bird's eye view of what's going on. So this was really insightful. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Barongo, that's the whole thing. And I know some of you might have thought Barongo is a dude like me until one day she spoke and I was like, what? My friend Barongo is a dude. Yeah, but yes, we learned that Barongo represents a twin. I'm assuming. I hope I'm right on that. But the key idea here is you have rightly stated, our dear sister, that the whole idea is appreciating the process. Yes, it's not about and the thinking. And all of you, irrespective of whether you're saying you're a front-end guy or a back-end guy, we must all dive into the space of the problem we are fixing. Don't design anything before understanding these elements of what you're creating. You don't need to know to be the guy who creates an API or consumes an API for you to appreciate that our system needs to connect to the SMS or the SMS gateway. No, you don't. All you need to know is that our system needs to send an SMS, so it requires an SMS gateway as an external system that we connect to. If our system receives payments, then it requires integration to the payment gateway for the sake of sending that. And if you have your own payment gateway, you connect to it. If you don't have any, you go to a provider who has one and you can connect to it. So, and it's very, very important for us to think in that frame of mind. And the key thing that we are putting at the center is who are we fixing the problem? That doesn't, I wanted to say, who are you fixing the problem for? That is very bad too. So the basic idea is you need to understand who is the person who is suffering because you don't have a solution. And what is the pain that they have? And the question that you have to answer is how later we can give them a solution to do that. Yes, so end of the conversation. Marlene, I would hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you guys for coming, for attending the session. These discussions are very important for what we'll be doing starting next week. So it's great having you in the session. And I think that brings us to the end today. We will be meeting tomorrow at 10 to 12. And see you then. Bye.